Chico Ruiz, a relatively obscure player in Major League Baseball history, cast a curse over two teams that continued until his mysterious and untimely death. This curse has lingered in the collective memory of multiple generations of fans and serves as a fascinating example of how superstition can intertwine with sports culture and, of course, baseball cards. Geraldo Sablón Ruiz, who went by the nickname Chico, was a Cuban baseball player for the Reds and later Angels. He signed with the then Cincinnati Redlegs in 1958 and was one of the last players to make it out of Cuba before Castro closed the borders following the revolution there. Though still in the minors in 1963, Topps featured him on a 4-1 Floating Heads rookie card in the 63 set, card 407. Look close, and you'll see he was billed as a second baseman. That's important because the Reds had another rookie second baseman that year, Pete Rose, of course. Controversy was destined. Chico was called up in 1964 and had to share time at second base with Rookie of the Year Pete Rose, who was pissed he was sharing time after winning Rookie of the Year and playing every day in 63. Ruiz also saw time at shortstop and as a pinch hitter, too. Once, pinch hitting for Pete Rose, the only instance a manager ever took the bat out of Rose's hand in his entire career, further infuriating the future hit king. Ruiz got another Rookie Stars card in 1964, card number 356, which he shared with Bill McCool, so the tensions began in the Reds clubhouse early in the 64 season. Also early in the 64 season, the Phillies were playing on a whole other level and were the early favorites for the National League pennant. Buoyed by their own rookie star, Dick Allen, and veteran stars Johnny Callison and Jim Bunning, the team was in first place right out of the gate, and they built a sizable lead in the National League standings and kept it all year. On September 21st, 1964, the Phillies had a 6.5-game lead in the pennant race over the Reds with 12 games to play. The Reds came to Philly for a 3-game series. A Phillies sweep would clinch the pennant. With no score in the 6th inning of a pitcher's duel, Reds rookie Chico Ruiz, who was playing third base that day, singled off of Phillies pitcher Art Mahaffey with 1 out in the 6th. He advanced to third base on a single by Vada Pinson, who was thrown out at second base by Johnny Callison in a failed attempt to stretch a single into a double. With 2 outs now and Ruiz on third, Hall of Famer Frank Robinson stepped to the plate, the Reds' best hitter. Mahaffey wound and delivered a strike to Robinson. The count was 0-1. Ruiz, noting Mahaffey had used a long windup on the first pitch and failed to check on him at third, broke for the plate before the second pitch, attempting to steal home. Seeing the runner, a rattled Mahaffey rushed and whipped the ball to home plate, but Phillies catcher Clay Dalrymple couldn't handle it. The ball went all the way to the backstop. Ruiz had stolen home, accounting for the only run of the game. The Phillies lost and went on to be swept at home by the second-place Reds. That steal broke their humps, as Dick Allen would say later in life. It was the first 3 of 10 consecutive losses for the Phillies, who were then swept by Milwaukee, allowing the Reds to take over first place in the National League, who went on a 9-game winning streak themselves. The Phillies were then swept by the Cardinals, who overtook the Reds for first place when the Reds lost a 16-inning saga against the Pirates, going 0-14 with runners in scoring position with 2 games to play. The Reds clubhouse was boiling over. The Phillies clubhouse was boiling over. Tensions were rising ever since Ruiz had stolen home. The Cardinals then lost to the Mets, setting up the finale with the Reds and Cardinals tied for first place with 92 wins, with 2 games to play. The Phillies were 2 games back, their collapse near complete. The final 2 games of the season took the Phillies to Cincinnati to play the Reds again. The Cardinals lost another to the Mets, so if the Reds swept the Phillies, they would have won the pennant. But the Phillies beat the Reds in both the final 2 games, with both teams finishing the year with 92 wins. And the Cardinals beat the Mets on the last day of the season for their 93rd win to clinch the pennant. An utter collapse, the great fold of '64. Chico Ruiz's steal of home was the beginning of the end for the '64 Phillies, which ended in losses, a string of injuries, and a catastrophic failure. Some Philadelphia sports fans still refer to the curse of Chico Ruiz as the reason for many of the misfortunes of the team over time. But the curse hit the Reds, too. Ruiz stole home on his own accord, and Reds coaches were pretty chuffed about it because it took the bat out of the hands of Frank Robinson, their best hitter. Even though it was a successful steal, it was a risk he should not have taken. Tensions between Chico and the Reds increased, as well as tensions between Pete Rose and Chico. The Reds manager clamped down on his team in the final days, perhaps squashing the freewheeling hustle that just might have won them a pennant that year. The curse of Chico Ruiz was a two-way curse. The Cardinals, led by Bob Gibson, would go on to win the World Series, leaving both the Reds and the Phillies to ponder what could have been and what should have been. The following year, the Phillies could not rekindle the magic, and Chico Ruiz found himself on the bench for the Reds for most of '65, only appearing in a scant 29 games. They turned him into a utility man after that, sporadically playing all over the field in '66 and '67, when he was asked to pinch hit for Johnny Bench, the only time in Bench's career he was sidelined for another bat. For the remainder of the decade, the Phillies sunk back to the basement, and the Reds never finished above fourth place. The leagues were split up in 1969 to East and West divisions, reshaping the pennant race for all time. Ruiz was still a part-time player in '69, hitting only .245 off the bench, so the Reds finally traded him in the offseason to the Angels. In 1970, the very next year following the trade of Ruiz and the release of the curse from their clubhouse, the Reds won the Western Division and the National League pennant. After 2 unsuccessful seasons playing for the Angels, and an alarming incident where he pulled a gun on a teammate, Chico Ruiz was released after the '71 season. In February of 1972, he wrapped his car around a light pole and was killed. Days later, the Phillies would pull off perhaps the best trade of all time, sending Rick Wise to the Cardinals for their ace, Steve Carlton. And that season would also bring up Mike Schmidt. The curse was broken with his sudden death. The Phillies were on their way to recapturing that which was taken from them in '64. But also for the Reds. Upon the departure of Ruiz, they immediately won the division and the pennant. Upon the death of Ruiz and the final breaking of the curse, the Big Red Machine began shortly thereafter, winning 3 pennants and 2 World Series in the next few years. Baseball players are notoriously superstitious, and most fans are at least a little bit stitious.
I'm not superstitious, but I am a little stitious.
The curse of the Bambino haunted Boston for nearly a century. The curse of the Black Sox kept a near century-long championship drought for Chicago's South Side, and the curse of the Billy Goat did the same for the North Side Cubs. The curse of Chico Ruiz was swift and powerful, taking out the championship dreams of the '60s-era Phillies and Reds, but was thankfully cleared with his mysterious and untimely death in 1972. He was alone when he crashed his car, and there were no witnesses to the incident. In the blink of an eye, he was just gone. A mysterious end to a mysterious career. A curse made, a curse broken. I, for one, do not have any Chico Ruiz baseball cards. Why risk it?